The beer bottle shattered against the bar top. The woman didn't flinch. In a room packed with Navy SEALs and combat veterans, the smallest person there, a tired nurse still wearing her hospital scrubs, had just disarmed a 200-pound operator in under a second. His face pressed into the wood, his arm locked behind him at an angle that made grown men wince. She hadn't even stood up. Then someone asked the question, "What's your call sign?" She went silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that precedes explosions. When she finally answered, 2 words made a battle-hardened SEAL drop his drink and stumble backward like he'd seen a ghost. Viper 1. The name everyone thought died 10 years ago. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Now, let's go back to where it all began. The Crossroads Bar sat 3 blocks from Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, close enough to hear the ocean, but far enough that the tourists didn't wander in by mistake. Thursday nights belonged to the operators, active and retired, the men who'd earned their tridents the hard way. The walls were covered with unit patches, faded photographs, and a handwritten sign behind the bar. No war stories after midnight. It was 11:47 p.m. Lena Crow pushed through the door at 11:51, and the cold air from outside followed her in like an unwelcome memory. She moved through the crowd without making eye contact, shoulders hunched, dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail that had started to come undone hours ago. Her scrubs were wrinkled, stained with something that might have been coffee or might have been blood. In the ER, the distinction stopped mattering around hour 10. She'd lost a patient tonight. 19 years old, motorcycle accident. They'd worked him for 43 minutes before calling it. His mother's screams still echoed in her ears. The bartender, Marcus, former Marine, good guy, caught her eye and nodded toward the end of the counter. The quiet spot. The place where people went when they wanted to be alone with their thoughts and a glass of whiskey. Lena slid onto the stool and set her phone face down. Whatever's cheap and strong. Rough one? They're all rough. Marcus poured 3 fingers of bourbon without asking twice. On the house. She didn't argue. The first sip burned in the right way, the kind that reminded you that you were still alive, still feeling, still here. The bar hummed with conversation, tactical gear talk, deployment stories, the kind of casual profanity that only existed among people who'd seen the same darkness and made it back. Lena wasn't listening. She was counting the tiles on the floor, counting her breaths, counting the hours until her next shift. Anything to stop counting the compression she'd done on that kid's chest while his heart refused to beat. She didn't notice the group at the other end of the bar getting louder. "Bro, I'm telling you, the new crop of trainees is soft. They quit after Hell Week like it's a weekend yoga class." The voice belonged to a big guy, 6'3", maybe 220, wearing a tight black shirt that showed off arms built in the gym and the teams. His name was Derek Hastings, and he was on his 5th beer, which meant his volume control had left the building. His buddy Carlos laughed. "Remember that one kid who rang the bell because he missed his girlfriend? Dude literally chose emotions over the trident." They laughed. The group around them laughed. It was the kind of laughter that came easy when you were on the inside, when you'd earned the right to mock the ones who couldn't hack it. Lena took another sip. The bourbon was starting to work. "I'm serious, though," Derek continued, voice rising. "Standards are dropping. They're letting anyone try out now. Probably going to let women into the teams next." He said it like it was a punchline. Someone whistled. "Careful, man. PC police will get you." "I'm just saying, there's a reason it's been all male for decades. You need a certain level of testosterone," Carlos offered. "Physicality, aggression. You can't train that into someone who doesn't have it." Lena's hand tightened around her glass. She told herself to let it go, to finish her drink and leave, to go home and collapse into bed and wake up tomorrow and do it all over again. She'd perfected the art of being invisible, of blending in, of not attracting attention. But Derek wasn't done. "I mean, look around. You see any women in here who could handle what we do?" He swept his hand toward the bar, and his eyes landed on Lena for the first time. "No offense, sweetheart." The room shifted. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Lena didn't look up. "None taken." "What do you do? Nurse?" She nodded slowly. "Respect. Seriously, important work." His tone dripped with condescension. the kind reserved for civilian jobs that didn't involve jumping out of planes or kicking down doors. But it's different, you know? What we do requires a whole different level of, I get it. Lena's voice was flat, empty. The voice of someone who'd heard this speech before and knew exactly how it ended. Derek grinned, emboldened by her silence. See? She gets it. No hard feelings. We all play our part, right? You save lives in the hospital. We save lives in the field. Different skill sets. Carlos nudged him. Leave her alone, man. I'm not bothering her. I'm just making conversation. He took a long pull from his beer, then stood up. The stool scraped against the floor. Actually, you know what? Let me buy you a drink. As a thank you for your service. He said it like he was doing her a favor, like she should be grateful. Lena shook her head. I'm good. Come on, one drink. What are you having? Cosmos? Appletini? A few guys snickered. The energy in the room was shifting, the way it does when a crowd senses entertainment. Lena could feel eyes on her, could feel the weight of judgment and assumption and the kind of casual cruelty that came from people who'd never been on the receiving end of it. I'm drinking bourbon, she said quietly, and I said I'm good. Derek's smile faded. He wasn't used to being turned down, especially not by someone he'd already decided was beneath him on the unspoken hierarchy of toughness. You always this friendly? Only when I'm tired. Must be exhausting, being a hero in scrubs. The sarcasm was thick enough to cut. Lena felt something cold settle in her chest, the kind of cold that came before action, before decision, before the point of no return. She'd spent 10 years burying that cold, smothering it under routine and medication and the daily grind of saving lives instead of taking them. But it was still there. It had always been there. Derek. The voice came from the corner, older, gravelly, authoritative. A man in his 50s with gray hair and a weathered face stood up slowly. His name was Frank Cordoza, retired senior chief, 23 years in the teams. Sit down. I'm just talking, Chief. You're drunk, and you're being an asshole. Sit down. Derek hesitated, pride warring with respect for rank and experience, pride lost. He took a step back toward his stool, and that's when it happened. Later, people would argue about whether it was an accident or intentional, whether Derek's hand slipped or whether he'd meant to do it all along. But the result was the same. The beer bottle left his hand and arced through the air, tumbling end over end, amber liquid spraying in a wide arc. It hit Lena's shoulder, soaking her scrubs, splashing across the bar, the sound of glass on wood loud enough to silence the entire room. Time stretched. Lena sat perfectly still, bourbon glass in her hand, beer dripping from her hair, her face, her clothes. She didn't gasp, didn't shout, didn't react at all. She simply set her glass down with deliberate care and reached for a napkin. The room held its breath. Derek laughed. It was a nervous laugh, the kind that tried to play off a mistake as a joke. Oh shit. My bad. Slipped. He turned to his friends expecting backup, expecting laughter. No one joined in, because something had changed. Frank Cordoza was watching Lena with an intensity that made the hair on the back of Derek's neck stand up. Marcus the bartender had frozen mid-pour, his instincts screaming a warning his conscious mind couldn't identify. Even the drunk guys in the corner had gone quiet. Lena wiped her face slowly, methodically, like she was cleaning blood from an incision. Her movements were precise, controlled, too controlled. Hey, Derek's voice cracked slightly. I said my bad. It was an accident. Lena still didn't look at him. She folded the napkin into a perfect square and set it on the bar. You gonna say something? Derek took a step closer, his pride now demanding a response, demanding acknowledgement, demanding something. Or are you just gonna sit there? I'm going to finish my drink, Lena said quietly. Then I'm going to leave. And you're going to forget this happened. The fuck I am. The alcohol and adrenaline were talking now. The toxic combination that had ended friendships and started fights in bars across the world since the beginning of time. You think you're too good to even look at me? He reached out. His hand closed around her wrist, and Lena moved. What happened next took 1.3 seconds. Her left hand came up and rotated his wrist outward, breaking his grip with a leverage point that turned his strength against him. Her right hand shot forward, palm strike to his solar plexus. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to fold him forward. She pivoted on her stool, using his own momentum to pull him off balance, her foot hooked behind his knee. One fluid motion, and Derek Hastings, 6'3", 220 pounds of Navy SEAL muscle, was face down on the bar with his arm locked behind him in a textbook joint lock that made his shoulder scream. The bottle he'd been holding shattered on the floor. Silence. Total, absolute silence. Lena held him there for exactly 3 seconds, then released him and returned to her stool like nothing had happened. Her bourbon sat exactly where she'd left it. Derek pushed himself up, face red, breathing hard, shock and pain and humiliation warring for dominance. "What the fuck?" Lena took a sip of her drink. "You grabbed me. You fucking..." He couldn't find the words. Around the bar, phones were coming out, recording, capturing, ready to share. His buddies were staring. The whole room was staring. Carlos stepped between them, hands up. Okay, everyone relax. Derek, you're cut off. We're leaving." "Like hell we are. She just assaulted me." "You grabbed her first," Frank said from the corner. His voice was calm, but his eyes were locked on Lena with an expression Derek couldn't read. "And from where I'm sitting, she defended herself quite effectively." "She's a fucking nurse. A nurse who just put you on the bar like you were going through BUD/S again." Frank walked closer, each step deliberate. "Where'd you learn that move, miss?" Lena didn't answer. That was a standing wrist lock into a takedown. Clean, controlled, no wasted motion. Frank's eyes narrowed. "I've seen that sequence before. Taught it myself, actually. Advanced CQC course, Dam Neck, 2009. The bar was listening now. Really listening. "Lots of self-defense classes teach similar things," Lena said carefully. "Not like that they don't." Frank pulled up a stool next to her. "You didn't think. You reacted. Muscle memory. The kind you get from drilling 1,000 times until it's automatic." He paused. "What's your name?" "Lena." "Lena what?" "Crow." "Where'd you serve, Lena Crow?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Lena's hand tightened around her glass. "I didn't." "Bullshit." Derek had recovered enough to be angry again. "She's lying. Stolen valor. Probably watched some YouTube videos and thinks she's special forces." "Shut up, Derek." Frank never took his eyes off Lena. "You don't get hands like that from YouTube." "Maybe she dated a SEAL," someone offered. A few people laughed, but it was uncertain laughter, the kind that died quick. "Test her." The voice came from the back, a younger guy, maybe late 20s, wearing a 75th Ranger tab on his jacket. "If she's real, she'll know shit civilians don't." Frank considered this. Fair enough. He leaned back. "Lena, what's the failure rate for SEAL training?" "About 75%, higher some years." "Anyone can Google that. What's the VO2 max requirement?" "There isn't a specific one. It's calculated based on age and performance during the run and swim phases." "How many pull-ups minimum?" "Depends on the phase. Initial PST requires 8 dead hang, but if you're only doing 8, you're not making it through." Frank's expression didn't change. "What's the water temperature in the Pacific during Hell Week?" "Low 60s usually, cold enough for hypothermia if you're not careful." "What does BUD/S stand for?" "Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL." "What's the grinder?" "The concrete courtyard where they do PT, where they break you." The questions came faster now from different voices around the bar. Lena answered each one without hesitation, her voice steady, her facts accurate. Details about training phases, equipment, protocols. Things you couldn't learn from movies or books. Things you had to live through. The room was changing again. The mockery was gone, replaced by confusion and something sharper. Suspicion. Interest. "Okay," Derek said, his voice tight. "So she knows some facts. Doesn't mean she served. Probably some groupie who hung around the base long enough to pick things up." "Then let's make it interesting." Marcus, the bartender, reached under the counter and pulled out a locked case. He opened it to reveal a Sig Sauer P226, the standard issue sidearm for SEALs. He removed the magazine, cleared the chamber twice, and set it on the bar. "Strip it." Lena stared at the weapon. "I'm not doing tricks." Not a trick. Verification. If you've handled a P226 in the field, you can break it down in your sleep. 30 seconds is the standard. Current record on that wall, he pointed to a leaderboard behind the bar, is 17 seconds, set by Frank. 16.8, Frank corrected. Asshole rounded up on me. Lena looked at the gun, at the faces watching her, at the phone cameras recording. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to let it go, to maintain the cover she'd built so carefully over the last decade. But something else was stirring inside her, something she'd tried to bury. If I do this, she said slowly, you let me leave. No more questions. No more tests. Frank nodded. You have my word. Lena picked up the weapon. The weight was familiar, comfortable, like shaking hands with an old friend you'd tried to forget. She ejected the magazine, already removed, but the motion was automatic. Press check, clear, safety on. Then she began. Her hands moved with precision that looked effortless, but was actually the product of thousands of repetitions under stress, under fire, under conditions where a jam could mean death. Slide release, barrel removal, recoil spring, guide rod, every piece separated and laid out on the bar in perfect order. 11 seconds. Then she reassembled it, each component clicking into place with the kind of certainty that comes from doing something so many times that your hands remember even when your mind tries to forget. Total time, 16.1 seconds. She set the completed weapon on the bar, magazine inserted, chamber clear, safety on. The leaderboard had a new name at the top. Nobody spoke. Marcus was the first to break the silence. Holy shit! Frank leaned forward, his weathered face serious. I'm going to ask you one more time, Lena Crow. Where did you serve? Lena stood up. She pulled out her wallet, left cash on the bar, enough to cover her drink and a generous tip. I need to go. Answer the question. I already did. I didn't serve. Then how? Good night, gentlemen. She turned toward the door. Derek stepped in front of her, his humiliation now fully transformed into anger. You're not leaving until you tell us the truth. You want to come in here, embarrass me, show off like some kind of move. The word was quiet, cold. The kind of cold that lives at the bottom of the ocean. Derek didn't move. Make me. Around them, the bar tensed. Phones stayed up. A few guys stood, ready to intervene, though it wasn't clear which side they'd take. Lena looked at Derek, really looked at him for the first time. Saw the insecurity hiding behind the bravado. Saw the kid who'd probably been bullied in high school and found his identity in the teams. Saw someone who needed to prove himself to a room full of people who already knew his worth. She saw herself 10 years ago. You don't want to do this, she said softly. Try me. Frank stood up. Derek, stand down. Not until she... The door opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying with it the smell of ocean and rain. 3 men entered, moving with the kind of deliberate calm that came from experience and authority. The one in front was in his late 50s, gray hair cut military short, wearing casual clothes that couldn't hide the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in command. The bar recognized him instantly. Captain James Riley, retired SEAL Team 6, former commander, the kind of man whose name was spoken with respect in rooms like this. He stopped inside the door, his eyes scanning the bar, assessing threats and situations the way old operators never stopped doing. His gaze passed over Derek, over Frank, over Marcus. Then it landed on Lena. He froze. The color drained from his face. His right hand twitched toward his hip, where a sidearm would have been if he was carrying. His lips parted, forming a word that didn't come out. Captain? One of his companions asked. You okay? Riley didn't answer. He was staring at Lena like she was a ghost, like she was something impossible. His breathing had changed, shallow and quick, the physiological response to seeing something that shouldn't exist. Lena met his eyes, held them. An entire conversation happened in that silence, visible only to the two of them. It can't be, Riley whispered. The bar leaned in. Something was happening, something big. Frank moved to Riley's side. Sir, what's going on? Riley swallowed hard. That woman. His voice was shaking. What's she doing here? We were just trying to figure that out ourselves. She won't tell us where she served. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't be anywhere. Riley took a step forward, then stopped, like approaching her might make her disappear. "What's your name?" Lena's jaw tightened. "You know what it is?" "I know what it was. Tell me your name." "Lena Crow." "Your real name." The bar went silent. Even Derek had backed off, sensing that something bigger than his ego was unfolding. Lena's hands were steady, but her eyes held something ancient and wounded. "That's not how this works, Captain. It is when—" Riley stopped himself. Looked around at the phones, the witnesses, the crowd. "Everyone out." "Sir?" Marcus looked confused. "Everyone? Out, now. This is a national security issue. You can't just—" "I'm calling it in." Riley pulled out his phone. "You've got 2 minutes to clear this bar before Shore Patrol gets here." The threat worked. People started moving toward the door, complaining but complying. Derek lingered, looking between Riley and Lena. "What the hell is going on?" "You're about to find out that you picked a fight with the wrong person," Frank said quietly. "Come on, let's go." The bar emptied in 90 seconds. Only Riley, his 2 companions, Frank, Marcus, and Lena, remained. Riley waited until the door closed. "You're supposed to be dead." "I know." "The mission report said—" "I know what it said. They held a memorial. Full honors. Your name is on the wall at Dam Neck." His voice cracked. "We buried you. You buried a coffin. It was empty." One of Riley's companions, a younger operator with sharp eyes, spoke up. "Who is she, Captain?" Riley didn't take his eyes off Lena. "Gentlemen, you're looking at a legend, the kind we tell stories about in classified briefings, the kind who's not supposed to exist." He took a breath. "And if she's here, alive after 10 years, something is very, very wrong." Lena's phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it. Frank stepped forward. "With respect, sir, we need some context here." "You want context?" Riley's laugh was bitter. "Fine, but it doesn't leave this room." He pointed at Lena. "That woman saved 23 lives on a mission that was supposed to be routine. She held a position for 6 hours against overwhelming force while extraction got civilians out. She took hits that should have killed her 3 times over, and when we finally reached her position, she was still standing, still fighting, still covering the evac. The room absorbed this information like a blow. She was the best operator I ever commanded, and the official record says she died in action, classified location, deserving of every medal we could pin on her coffin." Riley's voice dropped. "So I'll ask again. What the hell are you doing here, alive, working as a nurse?" Lena's phone buzzed again, insistent. "Living a different life," she said quietly. "Bullshit. You don't just walk away from—" "I didn't walk away. I was carried out, medically discharged, reconstructed, relocated, given a new identity and a very clear understanding that my old life was over." Her voice was flat, reciting facts. "Viper 1 died in the Hindu Kush. Lena Crow was born in a veterans hospital in Maryland. That's the story." "Viper 1. Frank repeated the call sign like a prayer. "I've heard that name." "So as anyone who served in JSOC between 2010 and 2015, Riley said, she was a ghost story. The operator they brought in when everything else failed." Lena's phone buzzed a 3rd time. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her expression changed. Something in her eyes sharpened, focused, became something other than the tired nurse who'd walked into this bar an hour ago. "I need to take this," she said. "No." Riley moved to block the door. "Not until you tell me, Captain." The word was spoken softly, but it carried weight. Command. The voice of someone who'd led men into darkness and brought them home. "Move." Riley hesitated. Then, perhaps remembering who he was talking to, what she'd done, what she'd survived, he stepped aside. Lena answered the phone, walking to the far corner of the bar. Her voice dropped too low to hear, but her body language spoke volumes. Spine straight, shoulders back, the exhaustion replaced by something harder. She spoke for 90 seconds, then hung up. When she turned back to face the room, she wasn't Lena Crow anymore. The mask had slipped, revealing something underneath that made even Riley take an unconscious step back. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying a weight it hadn't held before, "I need you to make a phone call." To who? Your contact at JSOC, the one you're not supposed to have but definitely do. She walked back to the bar, picked up her bourbon, and drained it in one swallow. There's been an incident, classification level black, time sensitive, and apparently, despite everyone's best efforts to keep me dead, she set the glass down with deliberate care. They need Viper 1 back. The words hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Riley's face went pale. What kind of incident? The kind that involves a name from my old life. A boy I pulled out of a burning village in 2014. He'd be 23 now. Her voice was steady, but her hands had curled into fists. He was taken 3 days ago. Eastern Syria, hostage situation, high-value target to multiple interested parties. Intel says he has 72 hours before execution. That's not your problem anymore, Riley said, but his voice lacked conviction. He wouldn't be alive if not for me. I made him a promise that day. Told him he'd be safe, that he'd get to grow up. Lena looked at her hands, at the scars that crisscrossed her knuckles, visible now that she wasn't trying to hide them. I don't break promises. Frank spoke up. Even if you wanted to help, you're not active duty. You can't just, I'm not asking for permission. Then what are you asking for? Lena turned to Riley. I need intel. Current satellite imaging of the region. Details on the group holding him. Entry points. Patrol patterns. Everything your contacts can pull without official channels. She paused. And I need it in 6 hours. Riley stared at her. You're talking about a solo extraction, deep in hostile territory, against unknown opposition, with no backup, no support, no... I'm talking about keeping a promise. You'll die. Maybe. Lena's smile was cold and distant. Won't be the first time. The bar stayed silent. Then Frank cleared his throat. Hypothetically speaking, if someone were crazy enough to attempt this, they wouldn't have to go alone. Lena looked at him. I work alone. You used to work with a team, a good one, until... Frank trailed off. Until they all died because I trusted bad intel and made a call that got them killed. Lena's voice could have cut glass. That's why I work alone now. That's not what the mission report said. The mission report was classified and redacted to protect people who should have been held accountable. Riley interrupted. This is insane. You can't... Captain. Lena met his eyes. That boy's name is Khalid. He wanted to be a doctor. He used to draw pictures of the human body, trying to understand how it worked. He gave me one of those drawings before evac. I still have it. Her voice softened. He's alive because I didn't give up on him then. I'm not starting now. The weight of those words settled over the room. Riley closed his eyes, took a breath. When he opened them again, he was making a decision he'd probably regret. 6 hours, I'll get you what I can, but understand, this is off book. If it goes wrong, there's no cavalry coming. There never was. Marcus spoke for the first time in minutes. You're really going to do this? It wasn't a question. Lena headed for the door, then paused. She turned back to Derek, who'd been watching from the shadows, his face a mixture of awe and shame. The reason women can't serve in the teams, she said quietly, isn't because we lack the physicality or aggression. It's because men like you need to believe we do. It makes your accomplishments feel bigger, more exclusive. She held his gaze. But here's the truth. The hardest operators I ever knew didn't have to prove how tough they were. They just did the job. And some of them were women you'll never hear about because their missions stay classified long after they're gone. She walked out into the night. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a chapter ending. Derek stood frozen, his beer-soaked ego now replaced with something that might have been understanding or shame, or both. Frank was the first to move. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. Riley did the same, his fingers moving across encrypted messaging apps, pulling favors that would cost him later. Marcus poured himself a stiff drink and stared at the leaderboard on the wall, at the new name at the top. Outside, in the parking lot, Lena sat in her car with the engine running. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. Her eyes were closed. She was breathing in counts, 4 in, hold 4, 4 out. The pattern they'd taught her to manage stress, to control fear, to stay focused when everything was falling apart. She'd rebuilt herself as Lena Crow, learned to save lives instead of taking them, found purpose in trauma bays and ERs, in the daily grind of human suffering that could be fixed with stitches and surgery and time. But Viper 1 was still in there, still waiting, still ready, and now someone needed her. Lena opened her eyes, put the car in gear. Somewhere across the world, a clock was counting down, and the ghost everyone thought was dead was going back to war. The safe house was a 40-minute drive from Coronado, tucked into a neighborhood in Chula Vista where nobody asked questions and the houses all looked the same. Lena had rented it under a different name 2 years ago, paying cash 6 months at a time, keeping it as insurance against a day she'd hoped would never come. That day had arrived. She pulled into the garage at 1:47 a.m. and killed the engine. The space smelled like concrete and motor oil and the particular staleness that came from disuse. She sat in the darkness for 30 seconds, listening. Old habits. Always clear the environment before moving. Nothing. Just the tick of the cooling engine and distant traffic on the 805. Inside, the house was sparse. Furniture from secondhand stores. No photographs. No personal items. The kind of place that could be abandoned in 60 seconds and leave no trace of who'd been there. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. The basement was different. Lena moved the false panel in the closet floor and descended wooden stairs that creaked despite her careful weight distribution. At the bottom, fluorescent lights flickered to life, revealing a space that looked nothing like the house above it. Equipment racks lined one wall, tactical gear organized with military precision. A gun safe stood in the corner, its contents representing years of careful acquisition through channels that didn't keep records. A workbench held tools for fieldcraft and improvisation, and on the far wall, a corkboard covered in photographs, maps, and notes written in a shorthand only she could read. Lena stood in the center of the room and let herself remember. The last time she'd been Viper 1, she'd been part of a 6-person team. The best operators JSOC could assemble. They'd run missions in 14 countries over 3 years, the kind of work that never made the news because success meant nobody knew it happened. Then came Operation Sandrift. Bad intel, wrong location, a trap disguised as a rescue. Her team had walked into an ambush in a village that was supposed to be civilian only. Instead, they'd found 40 insurgents with heavy weapons and a willingness to use human shields. The firefight lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 5 operators were dead, and Lena had taken rounds in 3 different locations: shoulder, abdomen, thigh. She'd held the final position alone, covering the civilian evacuation, refusing to fall back until every non-combatant was clear. They'd found her propped against a wall, her rifle empty, her sidearm in her hand, surrounded by brass casings and the bodies of men who'd tried to overrun her position. She'd been conscious enough to give the all-clear signal before passing out. She'd woken up 3 weeks later in a military hospital with a chest full of metal and a future that didn't include active duty. Lena shook off the memory and started moving. There was work to do. She pulled her phone and opened an encrypted messaging app that she'd promised herself she'd delete 100 times, but never did. One new message, sent 2 minutes ago. Riley. Package inbound. 0400 hours. Same drop protocol. 4 hours. Enough time to prepare, but not enough to second guess. Lena opened the gun safe. Inside were weapons she'd collected over the years, some legal, some less so, all maintained with obsessive care. She selected an HK-416 with a suppressor, a SIG P226 that matched the one at the bar, and a backup Glock 19. Ammunition in sealed containers. Magazines loaded and tested. Everything checked, rechecked, and checked again. She pulled out a tactical vest and began loading it. Magazines, medical kit, comms gear, climbing rope, breaching charges, water, energy bars. The weight settled on her shoulders like an old coat, familiar despite the years. Her phone buzzed. A different number this time, unknown. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her thumb the accept button. "This is Crow." "You don't remember me." The voice was young, male, carrying an accent that placed him somewhere in the Middle East. "But I remember you. You carried me on your back for 3 kilometers while people shot at us." Lena's breath caught. "Khalid." "They took me because of my work. I'm a doctor now, like I wanted. I was volunteering at a refugee camp when they came. His voice was steady, controlled, the kind of control that came from accepting death. They want to trade me for weapons. But the people who have me, they won't honor any deal. I've heard them talking. Where are you? I don't know exactly. A compound. Eastern Syria, I think. Desert. I can see mountains to the north. He paused. You don't have to come. I'm calling because they let me make one call, and I wanted to thank you for giving me the years I've had, for making it possible. How long do you have? They said 72 hours. That was 3 days ago, so not long. Lena felt the cold settle in her chest again, deeper this time. I'm coming. You can't. It's suicide. Probably, but I made you a promise. Silence on the line, then a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You really are crazy. So I've been told. Lena glanced at her watch. Listen carefully. When things start happening, you need to be ready to move. Fast. No hesitation. Can you do that? I'm a refugee doctor in a war zone. Moving fast is how I've stayed alive. Good. Stay low. Stay quiet. And when you see fire in the sky, run east. Understand? East, toward the mountains. Someone will find you. Who? Me. The line went dead. Lena set the phone down and returned to her preparations. The cold in her chest had spread now throughout her body, settling into her muscles and bones. It was the feeling she'd learned to trust more than fear or doubt, the feeling that came before action. At 0347 hours, her phone buzzed with GPS coordinates. She memorized them, then deleted the message. At 0402, a car pulled up outside. No headlights. Engine running. Lena grabbed a duffel bag she'd packed with civilian clothes and basic supplies, then headed upstairs. She locked the basement, reset the false panel, and walked out the front door like she was leaving for a morning shift at the hospital. The car was a nondescript sedan. The driver was one of Riley's men from the bar, the younger one with sharp eyes. He didn't speak, just handed her a tablet and a manila envelope. The tablet showed satellite imagery of a compound in Syria. 20 buildings, high walls, guard towers, an estimated 40 to 60 hostiles based on thermal imaging. The envelope contained a passport, cash in 3 currencies, and a flight itinerary leaving San Diego in 6 hours. Captain says good luck, the driver said. Lena nodded. Tell him I said thank you. He also said not to get killed. He's tired of holding memorials for people who aren't dead. The ghost of a smile crossed Lena's face. I'll do my best. She took the materials and walked to her own car. The sedan pulled away, disappearing into pre-dawn darkness. Lena sat in the driver's seat and studied the satellite images. The compound was isolated, surrounded by open desert. Approach would be difficult. Extraction would be harder. This was a mission designed for a team: overwatch, breach element, security, exfil. Doing it alone was insane, but insane was sometimes the only option left. Her phone rang. Frank Cordoza. You're actually doing this, he said without preamble. Yes. Then you need to hear something first. I made some calls, called in favors, got access to the classified portions of the Sandrift After Action report. He paused. The intel that led your team into that ambush? It wasn't bad. It was deliberately falsified. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. What? Someone fed your team wrong coordinates and mission parameters. The investigation concluded it was likely an inside leak, but they never identified who. The whole thing got buried under national security classifications. Why are you telling me this? Because you've spent 10 years blaming yourself for decisions made on corrupted information, and because whoever set up your team might still be operational. Frank's voice hardened. Watch your 6 on this. If someone wanted Viper 1 dead badly enough to sacrifice an entire team, they might not be thrilled she's alive. The call ended. Lena sat in silence, processing. 10 years of guilt, 10 years of believing she'd failed her team through bad leadership, and all of it built on a lie. The cold in her chest turned to ice. She started the car and drove to a 24-hour gym she'd joined under her Crow identity. At 0500, the place was nearly empty, just a few early risers and shift workers trying to stay fit. She changed in the locker room and hit the weights. The routine was automatic. Deadlifts, squats, pull-ups, push-ups. Her body remembered what to do even as her mind worked through mission parameters. She wasn't in the same shape she'd been 10 years ago. Combat fitness deteriorated fast without constant training, but she was close enough. Years of hospital work had kept her strong, kept her moving, kept her ready for something she'd hoped would never happen. By 0630, she was done. Showered, changed, looking like any other nurse heading to work. She drove to the hospital and clocked in for her shift. The charge nurse looked surprised. "Lena, I thought you requested today off." "Changed my mind, needed the distraction." The nurse studied her face. "Rough night?" "Something like that." The shift was busy, a trauma from a car accident, 2 heart attacks, a kid with appendicitis. Lena moved through it with the same controlled efficiency she brought to everything, her hands saving lives while her mind planned how to take them. At 1100, she took her break in the parking lot and made a call to a travel agent she'd used before for off-the-books travel. By 11:15, her flight was booked, San Diego to Istanbul to Gaziantep, with connections timed to avoid questions. She'd cross into Syria on her own. At 1300, her shift ended. She signed out, changed, and drove home to her actual apartment, the one where Lena Crow lived, with bills and neighbors and a life that felt increasingly like a costume she wore. She packed light. The duffel bag held clothes appropriate for the region, basic medical supplies, and cash. Everything else she'd need was already in transit or waiting at the safe house. Her phone buzzed. Riley again. Additional intel. Group holding target is former Syrian military gone mercenary. Leader named Qasim al-Rahman. Brutal but practical. Might negotiate if approached correctly. Might not. Lena typed back. Not planning to negotiate. Didn't think so. Good hunting. She deleted the messages and pulled out a burner phone from her desk drawer. One number programmed in. She'd never called it, but she'd kept it active for years, paying the bill through an anonymous account. The number belonged to someone she'd served with before her JSOC days. Someone who'd gotten out early, gone private sector, and now operated in the gray spaces between legal and illegal. Someone who owed her a favor. The phone rang 4 times before connecting. "This number shouldn't exist," a woman's voice said. "Neither should I." Silence. Then recognition. "Viper? I need a ride into eastern Syria. Quiet. Tomorrow night." "That's short notice. It's urgent." "What's the play?" "Extraction. 1 target. Hostile environment." "Alone?" "Yes." The woman laughed, bitter and knowing. "Still crazy, I see. Where and when?" Lena gave her coordinates near the Turkish border. 2,200 hours local. I'll have everything I need. You just get me in and wait for exfil's signal. This is going to cost you. I know. I mean really cost you. We're talking 6 figures, minimum. I have it. She did, mostly. Years of saving every dollar from her nursing salary, living cheap, preparing for emergencies. This qualified. Okay, but Viper? If this goes sideways, I can't come get you. Border's too hot. You'll be on your own. Story of my life. The call ended. Lena looked around her apartment, at the second-hand furniture, the medical textbooks, the life she'd built from the ashes of her old one. There was a good chance she wouldn't see it again. The mission parameters were suicide-adjacent at best, but Khalid was alive because she'd kept fighting when any rational person would have quit, and now he needed that same refusal to accept defeat. She couldn't give him anything less. At 1800, she drove back to the safe house. The equipment was laid out, checked, and rechecked. She spent 2 hours in the basement, running through procedures and contingencies, drilling movements until her muscles remembered. At 2000, there was a knock at the door. Lena went upstairs with her hand on her sidearm, cleared the angles, checked the peephole. Derek stood on the porch, alone, looking uncomfortable. She opened the door. "How did you find this place?" "I'm a SEAL. We have resources." He held up his hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "Then why are you here?" "To apologize and to help." Lena studied him. He looked different than he had at the bar, sober, serious, carrying the weight of realization. "I don't need help. Frank told me what you're planning. Solo op in Syria. That's a death sentence." "Maybe." "Definitely." Derek shifted his weight. "Look, I was an asshole last night. drunk and stupid and insecure. I said things that were wrong, did things that were worse, and then I found out I'd grabbed the wrist of a goddamn legend and treated her like she was nothing. He met her eyes. I want to make it right. You can't. Then let me die trying. He said it without drama, just simple fact. You're going after a hostage in hostile territory with no backup. I've run ops in Syria. I know the terrain, the players, the current situation. I can help. I work alone. You did work alone 10 years ago, after your team got killed. Derek took a breath. But before that, you worked with the best operators in the world. And you were good at it. The reports, the unclassified parts anyway, say you were the best team leader JSOC ever produced. You've been reading my file? I've been reading everything I could find, which isn't much because most of it's redacted to hell, but enough to know that Viper One didn't become a legend by going solo. She became a legend by leading people through impossible situations and bringing them home. Lena felt something crack in her chest. Except I didn't. Bring them home. Sandrift wasn't your fault. The intel was compromised. Frank told you that too? Derek nodded. He also said you've been carrying that guilt for a decade, punishing yourself, refusing to lead because you think you don't deserve to. He stepped closer. But that kid in Syria? He deserves a team, and you deserve to stop fighting alone. Lena wanted to say no, wanted to close the door and go back to her preparations. But something in Derek's voice reminded her of her old team, the certainty, the commitment, the willingness to walk into darkness because someone needed them to. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you want to do this? Because last night, I was everything I hate about the teams, the ego, the arrogance, the casual cruelty disguised as humor. He looked at his hands. I became a SEAL to protect people. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. You reminded me, the hard way. This isn't some redemption arc. This is a mission with a very high probability of failure. I know. You could die. I know. And if we succeed, nobody will ever know. There's no glory here. No medals, no recognition. Derek smiled, and it was genuine this time. Good. That's how it should be. Lena studied him for a long moment, saw past the bravado to the operator underneath, saw someone who was serious about the work, who understood the cost, who was willing to pay it. She stepped aside. Come in. We have 22 hours to prep, and you need to learn how I operate. Derek followed her inside, and for the first time in 10 years, Lena wasn't planning a mission alone. They worked through the night. Lena laid out the intel, the satellite imagery, the known variables and unknown threats. Derek absorbed it like a sponge, asking questions that showed tactical awareness and field experience. Entry point here, Lena pointed to the north wall. Guard rotation suggests a 40-second gap every 3 hours. We go in at 0300 local when alertness is lowest. What about exfil? Same way we came in, fast and quiet. And if it goes loud, then we adapt. Lena pulled up thermal imaging. Hostiles are concentrated in these 3 buildings. We avoid them. In and out before they know we're there. Derek studied the images. That's optimistic. It's all we've got. They drilled procedures, hand signals, emergency protocols, contingency plans for when, not if, things went wrong. Derek was good, better than Lena had expected. He moved with precision, adapted quickly, and didn't waste time on questions that didn't matter. At 0400, Frank showed up with Carlos and 2 other SEALs from the bar. They brought additional equipment, night vision, encrypted comms, medical supplies. Heard you might need backup, Frank said. Lena looked at the men assembled in her safe house. This isn't your fight. Kid saved by an American operator, now held hostage? Seems like our fight to me. Frank set down a case containing demolitions gear. Besides, Riley called, said to make sure you don't die. He's tired of the paperwork. Carlos grinned. Also, we're bored. It's been slow lately. Lena felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not the cold, not the ice, something warmer, something she'd forgotten existed. Trust. Okay, she said. Here's how this works. I lead. You follow. No ego, no improvisation unless I clear it. And if I say abort, we abort. No questions. Understood? Five heads nodded. Good. Then let's get to work. The next 18 hours were a blur of preparation. They divided responsibilities, Frank on comms and overwatch, Carlos on demo and breach, the others on security and support. Derek would run point with Lena, clearing and moving. At 1600, they loaded into 2 vehicles and drove to a private airstrip north of San Diego. A cargo plane waited, unmarked, engines warming up. Lena recognized the pilot, another ghost from her old life. They loaded equipment and lifted off at 1647, climbing into clear skies that would carry them halfway across the world. During the flight, Lena sat alone in the cargo hold, checking her gear one final time. Derek approached carefully, reading her body language. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why nursing? After everything you did, everything you were, why choose that? Lena was quiet for a long time. Because I got tired of taking lives. Wanted to see if I could save them instead. Did it work? Some days. She looked at him. Other days, I lose 19-year-old kids on my table and remember why I hated war in the first place. But you're going back. I'm going back for one person. To keep one promise. She met his eyes. That's different than fighting for oil or politics or whatever else they tell you it's about. Derek nodded slowly. I get that. They flew through the night, refueling once in Portugal, pushing east toward Turkey. Lena slept in 20-minute intervals, the old skill of grabbing rest whenever possible. The others did the same, experienced enough to know that sleep before a mission was ammunition you couldn't afford to waste. At 21:30 local time, they landed at a small airstrip outside Gaziantep. The plane taxied to a remote hangar where vehicles waited. Turkish military surplus, civilian plates, nothing that would attract attention. Lena's contact was there. A woman in her 40s, scarred and competent, who went by the name Cypher. She'd gotten out of the CIA years ago and now ran logistics for operations that didn't officially exist. Viper. Cypher extended a hand. Long time. Too long. Your equipment's loaded. Route's clear for now, but the situation's fluid. Syrian side is a mess. Regime, rebels, Russians, Turks, everyone running their own operations. You'll need to move fast and stay invisible. That's the plan. Cypher handed Lena a tablet with updated intelligence. Guard shift changed 2 hours ago. You've got a new window, 02:30 to 03:15. After that, they double patrols until dawn. Noted. And Viper, the group holding your target? They've got connections to Russian mercenaries. If this goes loud, you might have more than local militia responding. Good to know. They transferred equipment to the vehicles and drove south toward the border. The crossing was handled by a smuggler Cypher vouched for. Cash changed hands, guards looked away, and they rolled into Syria as the sun set behind them. The desert landscape was ancient and hostile. Villages appeared and disappeared in the darkness. Checkpoints glowed in the distance like warning fires. They avoided all of it, taking back roads that existed on no official maps. At 0200, they reached the rally point, an abandoned farm 5 clicks from the target compound. The team assembled in what remained of a barn, checking weapons and running final comms checks. Lena gathered them close. Last chance to back out. No judgment. This is voluntary. Nobody moved. Okay, here's the play. Frank, you're on overwatch with Thermal. Call out patrol patterns and threats. Carlos, you're on the south wall with Demo, ready to breach if we need an emergency exit. Derek, you're with me on primary entry. Everyone else holds security and covers exfil. She paused, making eye contact with each man. We go in quiet. We find Khalid. We get out. Simple. But if it goes wrong, if we get compromised, the mission becomes survival. We scatter, evade, and rally back here. Understood? Understood. Lena checked her watch. 0217, 13 minutes to the window. She pulled on her gear, feeling the weight settle. The cold in her chest was absolute now, spreading through every cell. This was the feeling she'd been born for, trained for, nearly died for. This was Viper 1 coming home. At 0229, they moved out into the darkness. The desert was silent except for wind across sand. They moved in tactical column, night vision turning the world green and ghostly. The compound appeared ahead, walls rising from nothing, guard towers punctuating the perimeter. Frank's voice crackled in her ear. Viper, I have 2 guards on the north wall. Patrol pattern suggests 30-second rotation. Window opening in 5, 4, 3. Lena and Derek moved. They crossed open ground in seconds, pressed against the wall, invisible in dead space. Above them, guards walked and talked, unaware. Lena counted heartbeats, timing the pattern. Then she moved up and over, Derek right behind her. They dropped into the compound without sound, and the mission began. The compound interior smelled of dust and diesel fuel and the particular staleness that came from too many men living in too small a space. Lena pressed against the wall of the nearest building, Derek beside her, both of them breathing shallow and controlled. Her night vision painted the world in shades of green, buildings, shadows, movement. Frank's voice was calm in her ear. 2 hostiles moving south courtyard. Patrol pattern suggests they'll clear in 30 seconds. Lena waited, counted. The guards passed 20 meters away, close enough to hear their conversation, something about cigarettes and sleep schedules. They disappeared around a corner. Clear, Frank confirmed. Lena moved. They crossed the courtyard in tactical bounds, covering angles, reading shadows. The compound was larger than the satellite imagery suggested. More buildings, more complexity, more places for things to go wrong. Intel said Khalid was being held in the northeast structure, a 2-story building that had probably been officer quarters before this place turned into a mercenary way station. Derek tapped her shoulder, 2 fingers pointed left. Guard smoking in a doorway, weapon slung, half asleep. Lena signaled, "Hold position." The guard finished his cigarette and flicked it into the dirt, stretched, yawned, wandered back inside. They moved again. The northeast building had 2 entrances, main door and a service entrance on the east side. Lena chose the service entrance. Less traffic. Less chance of walking into a room full of hostiles. The door was locked. Simple deadbolt. Derek pulled a pick set and went to work while Lena covered their 6. 10 seconds. The lock clicked. They slipped inside. The interior was dark and quiet. A hallway stretched ahead, doors on both sides, stairs at the far end. The smell changed. Unwashed bodies, stale food, something medicinal that might have been antibiotics or might have been something worse. Frank's voice, "Thermal shows 1 signature 2nd floor, northeast corner. Could be your target." Lena acknowledged with 2 clicks of her transmit button. She pointed up. Derek nodded. They moved to the stairs and began climbing. Each step was placed with care, weight distributed to minimize creaking. The building was old, the wood tired, every sound magnified in the silence. Halfway up, voices. Lena froze. Derek did the same. 2 men, speaking Arabic. Voices coming from the 2nd floor. Casual conversation. Something about payment and timelines and whether the hostage was worth the trouble. The voices moved away, fading into a different room. Lena continued climbing. The 2nd floor hallway was narrower than the first. 3 doors. The voices came from behind the middle one. The northeast corner room, where Thermal had shown the signature, was to the right. Lena approached the door. Listened. No sound from inside. She tested the handle. Locked, but not as secure as the exterior door. She could breach it, but the noise might alert the guards in the adjacent room. Derek pulled out a flex camera, a thin fiber optic line that could slide under doors. He fed it through the gap and handed Lena the monitor. The room was small. A cot. A bucket. A figure curled on the floor, hands bound, wearing clothes that had been clean once. Khalid. Lena pulled the camera back and made the decision. Noise or time? Pick one. She chose noise. She positioned Derek to cover the hallway, then drove her heel into the door just beside the lock. Wood splintered. The door flew open. Lena moved inside, weapon up, clearing corners. The figure on the floor jerked awake, eyes wide, mouth opening to scream. Lena was on him in 2 steps, hand over his mouth. Khalid, it's me, the woman from the village. 10 years ago. The eyes focused. Recognition flickered, disbelief, then tears. She released him and cut his bonds with a tactical knife. Can you walk? Yes. His voice was hoarse. How are you? Later. We're leaving. Now. Behind her, Derek hissed a warning. Contact. The door to the adjacent room had opened. A guard stood in the hallway, weapon unslung, face showing the slow realization that something was wrong. Derek fired. Suppressed. 2 rounds center mass. The guard dropped without a sound, but the damage was done. From downstairs, voices rose, shouting, questions, the thud of boots on wood. Compromise, Lena said into her comms. Moving to secondary exfil. Frank's response was clipped. Copy. I count 8 hostiles converging on your position. You need to move now. Lena grabbed Khalid by the arm. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. Understood? He nodded. They moved into the hallway. Derek was already at the stairs, covering the descent. Lena pushed Khalid ahead of her, weapon up, scanning for threats. The stairs exploded with gunfire. Rounds punched through the walls, splinters flying. Derek returned fire, controlled bursts, dropping back to create distance. Lena grabbed Khalid and pulled him into a doorway. How many? She called. 3 on the stairs, more coming. Derek's voice was steady despite the chaos. Lena assessed. The stairs were a fatal funnel. Going down meant walking into concentrated fire. They needed another way. She turned to Khalid. Windows. Which way faces the exterior wall? He pointed. That room, but it's a 3-meter drop. We've survived worse. She moved to the indicated room. Derek followed, laying down suppressing fire. The window was small, barred, but the bars were old metal set in older concrete. Lena pulled a breaching charge from her vest. Cover your ears. The explosion was sharp and confined. The bars blew outward, taking chunks of wall with them. Night air rushed in. Go! Lena pushed Khalid toward the opening. He hesitated, looking at the drop. Now, Khalid. He jumped. Derek followed, rolling as he hit the ground. Lena was last, weapon still covering the doorway. Rounds punched through the wall beside her head. She returned fire blind, then threw herself through the window. The ground came up hard. She absorbed the impact through her legs and rolled, training taking over. Came up in a crouch, weapon ready. Khalid was on his feet, Derek pulling him toward the exterior wall. Lena provided cover, scanning for threats. Frank's voice. You've got company. 6 hostiles moving around the east side. You need to go west now. But west meant crossing the main courtyard. Exposed. No cover. Carlos, Lena said, we need that emergency exit. On it. Charges set. Give me 30 seconds. They didn't have 30 seconds. The first hostile rounded the corner. Lena dropped him with 2 rounds. The second was smarter, using cover, firing in controlled bursts. Derek engaged while Lena moved Khalid toward the wall. Then the world lit up. Carlos's demolition charge blew a section of the south wall into rubble. The explosion was massive, deliberate, designed to draw attention and create chaos. It worked. Hostiles turned toward the blast. Voices screamed orders. Someone started shooting at shadows. Lena used the confusion. She pushed Khalid toward the breach, Derek covering their movement. They reached the wall and slipped through, emerging into the desert beyond. Carlos was waiting. Welcome to the party. We've got vehicles inbound, 2 minutes out. We don't have 2 minutes, Lena said. As if to prove her point, gunfire erupted from the compound. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Rounds kicked up sand around them. Spread out, Lena ordered, suppressing fire. Keep them pinned until exfil arrives. The team deployed in a loose perimeter, returning fire in disciplined bursts. This wasn't a firefight. It was a fighting retreat, trading shots to buy time. Khalid crouched behind Derek, hands over his head. This is insane. Welcome to my life, Lena said. An RPG streaked overhead, missing by meters. The explosion threw sand and rock. Frank's voice, Viper, we've got a problem. Thermal shows vehicles approaching from the north. 3 trucks, heavy weapons mounted, Russian plates. The mercenaries. Cypher had warned about them. How long? 4 minutes? Maybe 5. Lena did the math. Their exfil vehicles were 2 minutes out. The Russians were 4 minutes out, tight but manageable. Then she heard the sound that changed everything. A helicopter, low and fast, running lights dark, the unmistakable whump-whump of rotor blades cutting air. It came from the east, dropping fast toward the compound. Gunship, Frank said, Russian make, that's not good. Lena watched it descend. The helicopter was a Me-24, heavily armed, capable of turning their position into a kill zone in seconds. Abort secondary exfil, she said. Everyone scatter. Rally point echo. Move. The team began peeling off in different directions, using the darkness and terrain to disappear. But Khalid couldn't move as fast, didn't have the training, was already stumbling. Derek grabbed him. I've got him. Go. No, Lena said. You go. I'll cover. That's suicide. That's an order. Derek hesitated. The helicopter was circling, searchlight lancing through the darkness. In seconds, they'd be illuminated, exposed. Derek, get him out of here. Their eyes met. Derek nodded once. Don't die, Viper. Not planning on it. He disappeared into the darkness, half carrying Khalid. Lena stayed behind, weapon up, watching the helicopter circle. The searchlight swept closer. Voices from the compound were organizing, forming up for pursuit. She needed to give the team time. Lena stood up. The searchlight found her immediately. Locked on. The helicopter rotated, bringing weapons to bear. Frank, she said quietly. You still got eyes on me? Yeah, what are you doing? Buying time. When I say run, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Viper. That's an order, Senior Chief. The helicopter descended. 50 meters. 40. The downdraft kicked up sand and debris. Lena stood perfectly still, weapon lowered, hands visible, non-threatening. The helicopter touched down 30 meters away. The side door opened. Men jumped out, weapons up, moving in tactical formation. Professional, experienced. Russian mercenaries. They surrounded her in seconds. 6 men. Automatic weapons, night vision, body armor, the kind of operators who didn't make mistakes. The last man out of the helicopter was different, older, gray hair, facial scars that spoke of close combat. He walked with the confidence of command. He approached Lena, studying her. You are American? Yes. Special Forces. Former. Stealing from us is a bad decision. I'm not stealing, I'm retrieving. The Russian smiled. Retrieving, I like this word, but the doctor belongs to us now. Payment was made, contract signed. Then I'll buy him back. Not possible, we have reputation to maintain. Everyone has a price. The Russian's smile faded. You are very calm for someone about to die. Why? Lena met his eyes. Because I'm betting you're smart enough to know that killing me causes more problems than it solves. Explain. I'm here off book, no official support, but I've got friends in high places who know where I am. If I don't check in within the hour, they start making calls. And those calls reach people who can make your life very difficult. It was a bluff, a complete fabrication. But she sold it with the confidence of someone who'd spent years operating in gray zones where truth and lies blurred. The Russian considered, perhaps, but this does not change the situation. The doctor stays with us. Here's what I'm offering, Lena said. I walk away. You keep whatever payment you received for him, but you let him go. Call it a loss. Move on. And why would we do this? Because the alternative is messy. You kill me, my people come looking. They find out who you are, where you operate, who your clients are. Then things get complicated. International. Expensive. She paused. Or you let one hostage go and this all disappears. No heat, no problems. Just another mission that didn't work out. The Russian studied her. Behind him, his men waited, weapons ready. Then he laughed. You have balls, American. I respect this. He pulled out a radio, spoke in rapid Russian. A response crackled back. The Russian looked at Lena. My commander says you are lying, that you are alone, that we should kill you and dump your body where no one finds it. Lena's hand moved to her sidearm. Slow, deliberate. Then I guess we all die tonight. The Russian's men tensed. Safeties clicked off. Wait. The Russian raised a hand. I am curious. What is your name? Lena hesitated. The name carried weight, history, consequences. Viper 1. The effect was immediate. One of the Russian mercenaries stepped back, weapon lowering slightly. Another said something in Russian, urgent, almost fearful. The commander's expression changed, recognition, respect, and something that might have been concern. Viper 1, he repeated. I have heard this name. Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, the ghost operator. He studied her with new eyes. They said you were dead. They say a lot of things. The stories say you held a position alone for 6 hours, saved dozens, refused to die. The stories are exaggerated. Perhaps, but if even half is true. He trailed off, looked at his men, looked back at Lena. I am not paid enough to fight legends. He spoke into his radio again. Longer this time. An argument ensued. Lena caught fragments. Risk assessment, political complications. The name Viper 1 repeated. Finally, the Russian nodded. We will let the doctor go, but you will leave Syria, tonight. If we see you again, the offer expires. Deal. He signaled his men. They lowered their weapons, retreating toward the helicopter. The Russian paused before boarding. Viper 1. The stories say you never miss a target, that once you commit, nothing stops you. He smiled. I believe this now. But next time, we will not be so understanding. There won't be a next time. The helicopter lifted off, rotors screaming, sand blasting in all directions. Lena watched it disappear into the darkness, then activated her comms. Frank. Status? Holy shit, Viper. We're clear. Derek's got Khalid. Everyone's mobile. What the hell just happened? Negotiation. Rally point echo. 30 minutes. She started walking. Behind her, the compound was chaos. Guards shouting. Vehicles starting. Searchlights sweeping the desert. But none of it moved in her direction. The Russians had kept their word. Lena walked through the darkness, alone, the cold in her chest finally starting to thaw. She'd done it. The impossible mission. The suicide run. She'd gotten Khalid out alive and somehow survived the extraction. But as she walked, another thought crept in. The Russian had recognized the name, had known the stories, which meant Viper 1 wasn't as dead as she'd thought. The legend had survived, spreading through military and intelligence circles, growing with each retelling, and now she'd confirmed it, admitted it, put the name back into active play. That would have consequences. Rally Point Echo was an abandoned gas station 20 kilometers from the compound. The team had made it, dusty, exhausted, but alive. Khalid sat against a wall, drinking water, looking shell-shocked. Derek approached Lena. I don't know what you did back there, but thank you. I did what needed to be done. The Russian let you go. Just like that? Not exactly, but close enough. Frank joined them. Exfil's inbound, 10 minutes. We need to move to the pickup zone. Lena nodded. She walked over to Khalid, crouched beside him. You okay? He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. You came. You actually came. I made a promise. They were going to kill me tomorrow, execute me on camera. His voice shook. I thought I was dead. And then you appeared like a ghost. Not a ghost, just someone who keeps her word. Khalid grabbed her hand. The man who took me. Qasim. He knew about you. He said if you came, he'd kill you himself. He was waiting for you. Lena tensed. What? He left 2 hours ago. Said the Americans would send someone. Said he had a plan. Where did he go? I don't know, but before he left, he made a phone call. He used a name. Said something about finally settling accounts with Viper 1. The cold returned to Lena's chest. Sharper now, colder. Frank was listening. This was a setup. Not for Khalid, Lena said slowly. For me. Someone knew I'd come. Who? Lena thought back to the Sandrift mission, the compromised intel, the team that died. Frank's words echoed. If someone wanted Viper 1 dead badly enough to sacrifice an entire team, they might not be thrilled she's alive. I don't know, she said, but we need to leave, now. They loaded into the vehicles as headlights appeared in the distance. The exfil convoy, 3 trucks running dark, civilian plates, driven by Cypher's people. The team piled in. Engines started. They rolled north toward the Turkish border. Lena sat in the back, weapon across her lap, mind racing. Someone had known, had planned this, had used Khalid as bait, which meant this wasn't over. Beside her, Derek was quiet. Finally, he spoke. The Russian called you a legend. Russians exaggerate. Do they? Derek looked at her. I saw what you did tonight, the way you moved, the way you commanded. That wasn't exaggeration, that was real. Lena didn't respond. We're going to have a problem when we get back, Derek continued. The bar, the witnesses, the phones. By now, half of Coronado knows a woman took down a SEAL and stripped a weapon faster than the record. So? So your cover is Lena Crow, quiet ER nurse? It's blown. He was right. She'd spent 10 years building that identity. One night had destroyed it. I'll figure it out, she said. Or maybe you don't have to hide anymore. Derek met her eyes. Maybe Viper 1 doesn't need to be dead. Maybe she's exactly what the world needs right now. Lena turned away, looking out at the desert passing by. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? We just pulled off an impossible rescue because a legend decided to keep a promise. How many other people out there need someone like you? Someone who won't quit, won't back down, won't accept defeat. There's a reason I walked away. Yeah, because your team died and you blamed yourself. But that wasn't your fault. And staying hidden doesn't honor their memory. Doing what you do best, saving people, that honors it. Lena closed her eyes. She was exhausted, physically, emotionally. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the crash that always followed combat. But Derek's words stuck with her. They crossed the border at 0512, slipping through the same checkpoint they'd used on the way in. No questions, no problems, just money and silence. By 600, they were back at the airstrip. The cargo plane waited, engines idling. Khalid approached Lena before boarding. What will you do now? Go home. Back to my life. Will I see you again? Probably not. He nodded, accepting this. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn and stained. He handed it to her. Lena unfolded it. A child's drawing. Crude anatomy, heart and lungs. The same drawing he'd given her 10 years ago. I kept it, Khalid said, to remind me that someone believed I could be a doctor. Now I want you to keep it, to remind you that promises matter, that some people are worth fighting for. Lena took the drawing, felt something crack in her chest. Thank you, she whispered. They boarded the plane. The team settled in for the long flight home. Most of them slept immediately, the combat exhaustion finally claiming them. Lena sat alone staring at the drawing. 10 years ago, she'd saved this boy and lost her team. Tonight, she'd saved him again and gained something back. Not redemption, that was too clean, too simple, but maybe purpose, maybe direction, maybe a reason to stop hiding. The plane lifted off, climbing into the dawn sky. Below, Syria receded, a country torn by war, full of people who needed help but would never get it. Lena closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were crossing into European airspace. Frank was awake, checking his phone. His expression changed. We've got a problem. What kind? The video from the bar. It went viral. 20 million views. People are calling you the ghost operator, demanding to know who you are. Lena's stomach dropped. Show me. Frank handed over his phone. The video was shaky but clear. Lena disarming Derek, stripping the weapon, the timestamp showing her record-breaking speed. The comments were thousands deep. Speculation, theories, demands for identification. And then she saw the message that changed everything, posted 4 hours ago from an anonymous account. Her name is Viper 1. She was the best operator JSOC ever produced, and someone very powerful wants her dead. If you're reading this, Viper, they know you're alive, and they're coming. Lena read the message 3 times. Each word felt like a punch. They know you're alive, and they're coming. Frank was watching her face. You know who posted that? No. Lena handed back the phone. But I know who wants me dead. Care to share? Not yet. Not until I have proof. The plane droned on through the sky. Around them, the team slept. Khalid was curled in a seat near the front, finally safe, finally breathing without fear. Derek had his head back, mouth slightly open, the sleep of someone who'd earned it. Lena couldn't sleep. Her mind was running tactical assessments, threat matrices, probability trees. Someone had compromised the Sandrift mission 10 years ago. That same someone had used Khalid as bait, and now that same someone knew she was alive and operational. The question was why. "We land in 6 hours," Frank said quietly. "What's the play?" "Get Khalid somewhere safe. Debrief the team, then I start digging." Into what? Into who wanted Viper 1 dead badly enough to kill an entire team to make it happen? Frank was silent for a moment. "You think it was internal?" "I know it was internal. Bad intel doesn't just happen at that level. Someone fed us compromised coordinates. Someone made sure we walked into an ambush. Someone wanted that mission to fail." "Why?" "That's what I need to find out." The plane touched down in San Diego at 13:47 local time. They'd lost a day to time zones and travel, arriving back to a world that had moved on without them. But the internet hadn't forgotten. Cypher met them at the hangar with bad news written on her face. "We've got a situation." "The video," Lena said. "Worse. NCIS showed up at the Crossroads bar 2 hours ago. They're investigating the incident, interviewing witnesses, pulling security footage, and they've issued a bolo for a woman matching your description." "On what grounds?" "Assault on a federal operator, possible stolen valor, unauthorized handling of classified information." Cypher handed Lena a tablet showing the official notice. "They want you for questioning." Derek had woken up and was listening. "That's bullshit. I grabbed her. She defended herself." "Try explaining that to NCIS. They've got witnesses saying you were humiliated by a civilian claiming to be special forces. Your command is pissed." Derek's jaw tightened. "My command can—" "Stand down," Lena said. "This isn't about you. It's about forcing me into the open." Frank understood immediately. "Someone's using official channels to flush you out." "Exactly. They can't come at me directly because I'm supposed to be dead, but they can use NCIS to bring me in for questioning. Once I'm in custody, once my real identity is confirmed." She trailed off. "Accidents happen," Cypher finished, "especially to people who aren't supposed to exist." The team had gathered now, listening. Carlos spoke first. "So what do we do?" Lena looked at each of them, operators who'd followed her into Syria on nothing but faith and a promise. Good men who deserved better than being dragged into whatever conspiracy had killed her team. "You do nothing. This is my problem." "Like hell it is," Derek said. "We're a team now. You don't get to shut us out." "I'm not shutting you out. I'm protecting you. Whoever's behind this has reach, power. They've already killed 5 operators and buried the truth for a decade. I won't let them add your names to that list." "Then what's your plan?" Frank asked. Lena thought for a moment. "I go to ground, disappear, make them think I ran. And then? Then I find out who posted that message, who compromised Sandrift, who's been waiting 10 years for confirmation I'm alive." She looked at Frank. "I need access to classified databases, JSOC mission reports, personnel files from 2015. "That's going to be difficult." "I know, but you've got contacts, people who owe you favors." Frank considered this. "I can make some calls, but it'll take time." "I don't have time. NCIS will be knocking on my door by tonight." Cypher interrupted. "I can help with that. I've got a place in Mexico, off-grid, secure. You can work from there while Frank pulls the intel." "That's running," Derek said. "We should stand and fight." "Fighting requires knowing who the enemy is," Lena said. "Right now, all we have are shadows and suspicions. I need hard evidence before I can act." The team didn't like it, but they understood. In the Spec Ops world, sometimes the best tactic was to vanish. They split up. Khalid was placed in protective custody with people Cypher trusted, retired operators who ran security for a private firm, men who understood the value of keeping someone hidden. The team scattered to their own homes, ordered to maintain normal routines and deny any knowledge of Lena's whereabouts. Lena left with Cypher in a nondescript SUV, driving south toward the border. She'd packed light, just the essentials from her safe house, including the equipment she'd need for research and communication. They crossed into Tijuana at 1820, using a checkpoint Cypher had greased years ago. No questions, no records, just 2 women on a shopping trip. The safe house was 40 minutes south, hidden in the hills outside Rosarito. It looked like a vacation rental from the outside: tile roof, ocean view, solar panels. But the windows were bulletproof, the doors reinforced, and the basement held enough weapons and supplies to withstand a siege. "Make yourself comfortable," Cypher said. "I'll get you set up with secure comms." Lena dropped her bag and moved through the house, clearing rooms out of habit. Satisfied they were alone, she returned to the main room where Cypher was setting up a laptop and encrypted satellite connection. "This rig is clean," Cypher explained. "Routed through servers in 8 countries. Anonymous browsing. Can't be traced. You can access anything you need without leaving a digital footprint." "Thank you." Cypher studied her. "I've known you a long time, Viper, since before you were a legend, and I've never seen you rattled like this." "I'm not rattled. You're terrified. I can see it in your eyes." Lena sat down heavily. The exhaustion was catching up. 72 hours of operation with minimal sleep, combat stress, and now the weight of knowing someone powerful wanted her dead. 10 years, she said quietly. I spent 10 years building a new life, convincing myself I could move on, be someone different, and in one night it all came apart. Because you kept a promise. Because I couldn't let go. That's not a weakness, Cypher said. That's what made you Viper 1. You never quit, never abandoned people who needed you. It's why your team followed you anywhere. And it got them killed. No. Bad intel got them killed. A traitor got them killed. You did everything right. Lena wanted to believe that, but belief required proof. Her phone buzzed. A text from Frank on an encrypted app. Made contact, working on access. 24 hours minimum, 24 hours, a lifetime when someone was hunting you. Lena opened the laptop and started working. She began with the bar video, tracing its spread across social media. The original post came from someone at the bar, probably one of Derek's friends, sharing what they thought was a funny moment. But the viral spread had been amplified by bot networks, suggesting coordination. Someone wanted that video seen, wanted Viper 1's existence confirmed. Next, she tracked the anonymous message. The account was burner, created hours before the post and deleted immediately after. But the language was specific. Military. Someone who knew JSOC terminology and operational security protocols. Someone on the inside. Lena dug deeper, pulling data from archived forums and classified bulletin boards she still had access to through old credentials. The discussion about Viper 1 had exploded, operators sharing stories, some true, some exaggerated, all creating a mythology around a ghost. But one thread caught her attention. Posted 6 years ago on a private forum for retired JSOC personnel, someone had asked about the Sandrift mission. The responses were carefully worded, dancing around classification, but the consensus was clear. The mission had been compromised. Several operators suggested internal sabotage. One name kept appearing in the speculation: Colonel Marcus Brennan. Lena's blood ran cold. Brennan had been the operations officer for her unit. He'd provided the intel for Sandrift. He'd briefed the team. He'd coordinated with higher command. And 2 years after Sandrift, he'd retired with full honors and gone to work for a private military contractor, one with deep ties to defense contracts and foreign governments. Lena pulled his file. Marcus Brennan, age 58, 30 years in special operations, decorated veteran, current VP of operations for Aegis Global Solutions. The company ran security operations in 40 countries, hired former operators, and had contracts worth billions. She cross-referenced his financials. In the year before Sandrift, Brennan's accounts showed unusual activity: large deposits from offshore accounts, purchases that didn't match his military salary, investments in properties he shouldn't have been able to afford. Then, 3 months after Sandrift, a massive deposit, $5 million, transferred from a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Lena sat back. The pieces were connecting. Brennan had sold them out, had compromised the mission in exchange for payment. But why? Money was the obvious answer, but who was paying? And why target her team specifically? She dug further, pulling contract information for Aegis Global. Most of it was redacted, but one contract from 2014 stood out. A security detail in Afghanistan, protecting a CIA asset who was feeding intelligence on Taliban movements. The asset's code name had been redacted, but the location matched where Lena's team had operated months before Sandrift. She pulled mission reports from that period. Her team had conducted 3 operations in that region, all successful, all targeting high-value individuals. One of those targets had been a Taliban commander who was allegedly selling intelligence to foreign buyers. The commander had been killed in the raid, but before he died, he'd said something Lena had dismissed at the time. "You're protecting the wrong people." Now it made sense. The CIA asset had been dirty, selling intelligence to multiple buyers. Lena's team had gotten too close, had started asking questions. So someone had ordered them eliminated. Brennan had been the tool. The Sandrift mission had been the weapon. Lena's hands were shaking. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to plan. She needed proof, hard evidence that would stand up to scrutiny, because accusing a decorated colonel of murder and treason would require more than circumstantial connections. Her phone buzzed. Frank calling on the encrypted line. "I've got something," he said without preamble. A friend at JSOC pulled archived mission files, Sandrift debriefing notes. They were buried deep, classified above top secret. "What did you find?" 3 investigators questioned the intel source for Sandrift. All 3 recommended further investigation into Colonel Brennan. All 3 recommendations were overruled by someone higher up the chain. Who? That's where it gets interesting. The approval came from an office that doesn't officially exist. A SAP program related to intelligence compartmentalization. But my contact found a name attached to the approval. Frank paused. "Tell me," Lena said. "Deputy Director of Operations, CIA, a man named Richard Volkov. He authorized the burial of the investigation." Lena's mind raced. Volkov. The name was familiar. She'd heard it in briefings, seen it on operational orders. He was old CIA, Cold War veteran, architect of some of the agency's most ruthless operations. "Volkov and Brennan," she said slowly. "They were running a protection racket, keeping the dirty asset operational. My team was collateral damage." "Looks that way. But proving it, I know. I need a confession or a smoking gun. And even if you get it, taking down a CIA deputy director and a decorated colonel, that's career suicide for anyone who helps you. I'm not asking for help." "Too bad. You've got it anyway." Frank's voice hardened. "Those were good men who died at Sandrift. They deserve justice. And I'm not letting the bastards who killed them walk free." "Frank, I've already made calls, pulled in every favor I'm owed. By tomorrow, you'll have full access to classified databases, financial records, communications logs, everything you need to build a case. That could destroy your career. I'm retired. I don't have a career. What I have is a conscience." The line went quiet. Lena felt something warm in her chest, pushing back against the cold. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive what comes next." The call ended. Lena stood and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful and indifferent, nature unconcerned with human struggles. She thought about her team, about the men who'd followed her into that ambush, trusting her leadership, believing the intel was solid, about how they'd died, quickly for some, slowly for others, while she'd survived through luck and stubbornness. She thought about the 10 years she'd spent running from that guilt, hiding in a new identity, saving lives to atone for the ones she'd lost. And she thought about Brennan and Volkov, living free, profiting from their betrayal, sleeping soundly while 5 operators lay in graves decorated with lies. The cold in her chest crystallized into something harder. Purpose. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Lena Crow. The voice was cultured, older, carrying the weight of authority. "Or should I call you Viper 1? She recognized the voice from briefings years ago. "Director Volkov." "So you do remember. Good. That saves time." He sounded pleased. "I assume you figured it out by now, the connection between Sandrift and your current predicament. You used Brennan to kill my team. I used Brennan to neutralize a threat. Your team was asking the wrong questions about the wrong asset. Operational security demanded action." The casual admission made Lena's blood boil. "They were American operators, your people." They were obstacles. There's a difference. Volkov's tone didn't change. The asset we were protecting generated intelligence that saved hundreds of lives. The math was simple. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about national security. Sometimes the mission requires sacrifice. And now? What does the mission require now? Your silence. Permanent silence. Volkov paused. You've become a liability, Viper. The video, the rescue in Syria. You've drawn too much attention. People are asking questions, digging into classified operations. That can't continue. So you're going to kill me, like you killed my team. If necessary. But I'd prefer a cleaner solution. Retire again. Disappear for real this time. In exchange, I'll ensure Khalid remains safe and your friends remain untouched. And if I refuse, then I'll activate assets currently positioned near everyone you care about. Frank Cordoza, Derek Hastings, Carlos Martinez. The nurse you worked with last week, Jennifer something. The neighbor who waters your plants. Volkov's voice was cold. They'll die badly, publicly, and you'll watch before we finally put you down. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your security cameras, the ones at your apartment in San Diego. Lena pulled up her laptop, accessed the building's security system. The feed showed her apartment hallway. 2 men stood outside her door, professional, armed, waiting. As you can see, Volkov continued, I'm quite serious. You have 12 hours to decide. Disappear, or everyone you've ever cared about dies. Choose wisely. The line went dead. Lena stared at the screen. The men outside her apartment were real. The threat was real. Volkov had the resources and ruthlessness to carry it out. She could run, could disappear into the wind, let Lena Crow and Viper 1 both die, start over somewhere far away. It would be easy, safe. But it would also mean abandoning everyone who'd helped her, everyone who'd trusted her, everyone who'd believed the legend was worth following. And Lena was done running. She opened an encrypted messaging app and sent a single message to Frank. Volkov just made his move. We're out of time. Execute contingency echo. The response came immediately. Confirmed. All assets activated. Lena had planned for this, had spent years building networks and relationships precisely because she knew one day the past would catch up. Contingency echo was the nuclear option. Simultaneous exposure of Brennan's financials, Volkov's communications, the buried Sandrift investigation, and testimony from operators who'd always suspected the truth. Everything would go public. Congressional oversight committees, inspector generals, media outlets. The whole rotten conspiracy exposed to sunlight. It would be messy. Careers would end, people would go to prison, and Lena would likely be caught in the blast radius. But justice didn't come clean. She made another call, this time to Derek. Viper, what's wrong? Get to Frank's location. Now. Bring the team. Full loadout. What's happening? Volkov made a move. We're going active. I'm on it. No hesitation, no questions, just immediate compliance. That was what a team meant. Lena packed her equipment and headed for the door. Cypher was waiting. Heard the call, Cypher said. Need a ride? Need an army, Cypher smiled. Good thing I know where to find one. They drove through the night, heading back toward San Diego. While they drove, Lena's phone lit up with confirmations. Frank had activated every operator he knew, calling in decades of favors. Former SEALs, Rangers, Marine Raiders, men who remembered Sandrift, who'd lost friends, who wanted answers. By the time they crossed the border, Lena had 23 confirmed operators ready to move. Against Volkov's CIA resources and Brennan's private military contractors, it should have been suicide. But these weren't normal operators. These were the best of the best, angry and motivated, fighting for something that mattered. They assembled at a warehouse in Chula Vista at 0300, the space filled with quiet professionals checking weapons, reviewing intel, preparing for what came next. Frank briefed them on the situation. Volkov has assets positioned to take out our people if we move, but he's expecting Viper to run or surrender. He's not expecting a direct assault on his position. Where is he? Someone asked. San Diego, meeting with Brennan at Aegis Global Headquarters. They think they're safe, protected, untouchable. Then let's prove them wrong, Derek said. Lena stood. The room went quiet. 10 years ago, my team died because powerful men decided we were expendable. They buried the truth and walked away clean. She looked at each face. Tonight, we settle that debt. But understand, this is off book. No official support, no backup. If it goes wrong, we're on our own. We were always on our own, someone said. That's why we're here. Murmurs of agreement. Lena continued. Volkov and Brennan will have security, professional, well-armed. We go in hard, we go in fast, and we get what we need. Confessions, evidence, everything required to bury them legally. And if they don't cooperate? Carlos asked. Lena's smile was cold. Then we make them. They moved out at 0415, 3 vehicles rolling through pre-dawn San Diego. The Aegis Global building was downtown, 30 stories of glass and steel, secured but not impregnable. Frank had pulled the building schematics. Security was heavy on the ground floor, guards, cameras, checkpoints. But the executive level on the 30th floor had minimal coverage. They assumed height was security. They were wrong. The team split. Half stayed with the vehicles, managing comms and covering escape routes. The other half, Lena, Derek, Frank, Carlos, and 6 others, entered through the parking garage using stolen access cards. They moved through the building like ghosts, bypassing cameras, avoiding guards, climbing service stairs. Military precision. No wasted motion. At 0447, they reached the 30th floor. Brennan's office was at the end of the hall. Through the glass wall, Lena could see 2 men, Brennan and Volkov, sitting across a desk, discussing something with the casual confidence of people who'd gotten away with murder. Lena raised her fist. The team stacked on the door, then she kicked it open. The door exploded inward. Glass shattered. Brennan's hand went for the weapon on his desk. He never reached it. Derek was on him in 2 steps, weapon pressed to his temple, hand pinning his wrist to the expensive mahogany. Don't! Volkov didn't move. He sat perfectly still, hands visible on the armrests of his chair, face showing no surprise, like he'd been expecting this. Viper won, he said calmly. You chose poorly. Lena swept the room with her weapon. Clear, no additional threats. She signaled the team, secure the perimeter, lock down the floor, jam communications. They moved with precision, clearing adjacent offices, covering angles. She turned to Volkov. Hands behind your head, slowly. He complied, movements deliberate. You realize this changes nothing. You're assaulting federal officers in a private building. Every second you're here, you're committing felonies. Add it to the list. Lena pulled plastic restraints from her vest. Carlos, secure them. Carlos moved forward, zip-tying Volkov's hands. Derek did the same with Brennan, who was breathing hard, sweat beading on his forehead. This is insane, Brennan said. You can't just... Shut up, Derek said pleasantly. Seriously, just shut up. Frank was at the computer inserting a USB drive. I'm in. Pulling files now. Financial records, communications logs, operational reports. How long? Lena asked. 3 minutes. Maybe 4. Volkov watched this with calculating eyes. You think you'll find evidence? We've been cleaning up messes for 30 years. You won't find anything that sticks. Then you have nothing to worry about. What I have is a response team en route. You have maybe 10 minutes before this building is surrounded by federal agents. Then we better work fast. Lena pulled a chair and sat facing Volkov, close enough to see his eyes, to read his micro-expressions. Let's talk about Sandrift. There's nothing to discuss. That mission is classified. You classified it. After you compromised it. I did no such thing. You fed my team false intelligence through Brennan. You sent us into an ambush. You wanted us dead because we were investigating your asset, a Taliban commander you were protecting because he was selling you information. Volkov's expression didn't change, but his pupils dilated slightly. Tell, Lena continued. The commander was dirty, playing multiple sides, selling to the CIA, to the Russians, to anyone who paid. My team figured it out, started asking questions, so you eliminated the problem. Conjecture. You have no proof. Don't I? Lena glanced at Frank. How are those files coming? Got something, Frank said. Email thread from 2015. Brennan to Volkov. Subject line, Sandrift complication. Quote, the team is asking about Asset Scorpion. Recommend immediate action. Volkov's response, approved, provide corrected coordinates, make it look operational. The room went quiet. Brennan's face had gone pale. That's taken out of context. Really? Frank kept reading. Follow-up email 2 days after the mission. Brennan to Volkov. Operation successful, 5KIA, 1 survivor critical condition. Recommend medical discharge and identity protection to prevent further investigation. Volkov's response, agreed. Prepare memorial. Close the file. Lena stood up slowly. She walked to Brennan, who was shaking now, sweat running down his face. You wrote our obituaries, she said quietly, before we were even dead. I was following orders. You were covering your ass. How much did he pay you, Marcus? What's the going rate for murdering 5 American operators? It wasn't murder. It was operational necessity. It was treason. Lena's voice could have cut steel. You sold us out, got my team killed, tried to kill me, and for what? Money? Brennan looked at Volkov, desperate. Tell them it was bigger than that. Tell them about the intelligence we saved, the lives we protected. But Volkov said nothing. He sat in silence, watching Lena with ancient eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. He's not going to help you, Lena said, because you're a tool, expendable, just like my team was. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, right after we're done here. Lena turned to Volkov. Your turn. Why? Why was one asset worth killing American operators? Because the asset generated intelligence that prevented 3 major terrorist attacks. Because he gave us names, locations, operational plans. Because in the grand calculation, 5 operators was an acceptable loss. The casual dismissal made something crack inside Lena. Acceptable loss? That's what you called them? That's what they were, casualties of a larger war. They had names, families, futures. They were people, not numbers on a spreadsheet. And they knew the risks when they signed up. Volkov's voice was ice. Every operator understands the possibility of not coming home. Your team was no different. Except they thought they were fighting the enemy, not being murdered by their own people. Semantics. Lena's hand moved to her sidearm. Derek saw it and stepped closer, ready to intervene if needed. But Lena didn't draw. Instead, she took a breath. Let the cold settle. Let the rage crystallize into something useful. Frank, you get everything? Every file, every email, every financial transaction. It's all here. Good. Send it. All of it. Every contact we have. Congressional oversight, Inspector General, media outlets. Make sure it can't be buried. Frank's fingers moved across the keyboard. Sent. Multiple recipients, encrypted and time-stamped. Volkov's composure finally cracked. You're making a mistake. Those files are classified. Releasing them is a federal crime. Then arrest me. Oh, wait. You can't. Because you're in plastic restraints. This won't end the way you think. There are mechanisms in place. Protocols. I'll be back on the street in 48 hours. Maybe. But the truth will be out. And you can't bury it this time. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Time to go, Derek said. Lena didn't move. She stood staring at Volkov, this man who'd ordered her team's death with the same casual authority he'd used to order coffee. She wanted him to hurt, wanted him to feel what her team had felt in those final moments, but that would make her like him. Lena, Frank's voice was gentle. We need to move. She nodded. Turned away from Volkov. You think you've won? Volkov called after her. You think releasing files changes anything? I've survived 4 administrations, 3 wars, and more investigations than you can count. This is Tuesday for me. Lena paused at the door. Maybe, but my team has names now, and justice. That's more than they had yesterday. They left Brennan and Volkov restrained in the office, doors locked from the outside. The team moved fast through the building using service exits and maintenance corridors. Behind them, police were entering the lobby, responding to silent alarms. They split up in the parking garage. 3 vehicles, different directions, rendezvous point 40 miles south. Lana rode with Frank and Derek, taking surface streets, avoiding highways. The sun was rising, painting San Diego in gold and pink. Derek broke the silence. So what now? Now we wait. The files will take time to process. NCIS will investigate. Maybe Congress gets involved. It could take months. And in the meantime? In the meantime, Volkov's right. He probably walks. Men like him always do. Frank glanced at her in the rearview mirror. But you still did it. Still exposed them. Yeah. Why? If you knew he'd probably get away with it? Lena looked out the window at the city passing by. Because my team deserves to have their story told. Even if justice never comes, at least the truth is out there. People will know they didn't die on a routine mission. They died because someone betrayed them. They drove in silence for a while. Then Derek's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his eyes widened. Holy shit. What? The files. They're everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, WikiLeaks. Someone leaked the leak. He scrolled through his feed. News outlets are picking it up. CNN, Fox, The Post. Everyone's running stories about Operation Sandrift and the Viper 1 conspiracy. Frank smiled grimly. Can't put that genie back in the bottle. Within hours, the story exploded. Congressional committees demanded hearings. The Secretary of Defense issued a statement promising a full investigation. Retired operators came forward with their own stories of suspicious missions and buried reports, and social media went insane. The bar video of Lena had already made her internet famous. Now people connected the dots. The mysterious woman who'd disarmed a SEAL was the legendary Viper 1, the ghost operator who'd been declared dead, the survivor of a conspiracy that had killed her entire team. The narrative wrote itself. Underdog, betrayal, revenge, justice. It was everything people loved. By noon, Lena's face was on national television. News anchors who'd never heard of JSOC were explaining special operations and classified missions. Veterans organizations demanded accountability. Hashtags trended. Memes spread. Viper 1 wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a movement. Lena watched it unfold from Cypher's safe house, feeling like she was observing someone else's life. This person on the screen, the heroic operator who'd survived the impossible, who'd exposed corruption, who'd fought for justice, that wasn't her. That was a story people wanted to believe. The real Lena was just tired. Her phone rang. Captain Riley. You've caused quite a situation, he said, but there was approval in his voice. Wasn't exactly planned. Never is with you, but I'm calling with good news. NCIS dropped the investigation. Officially, you were acting in self-defense at the bar. The assault charges are gone. What about the classified material? Congressional oversight is claiming whistleblower protection. You exposed wrongdoing. They're treating you as protected. And Volkov? Riley paused. He resigned this morning. Brennan, too. Both claiming health reasons. But between you and me, they've been told to disappear or face federal prosecution. So they walk. They walk. But their careers are over. Their reputations destroyed. And they'll spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. Riley's voice hardened. It's not justice, but it's something. Lena closed her eyes. Is it enough? You tell me. She thought about her team, about the memorial service she'd watched from a distance 10 years ago, seeing her own name on the wall alongside theirs, about the decades spent hiding, running, trying to become someone else. No, she said finally, it's not enough, but it's what we've got. Then what will you do? I don't know yet. The call ended. That night, Lena returned to San Diego. The city felt different now, less like a hiding place, more like home. She drove to the apartment she'd rented as Lena Crow, half expecting it to be destroyed or seized. Instead, she found flowers on her doorstep, dozens of bouquets, cards from veterans, from families of fallen soldiers, from people who'd seen her story and wanted to say thank you. She sat on the steps and read them. Letters from strangers who'd lost loved ones to war, who'd struggled with their own demons, who'd found inspiration in her survival. One card made her cry. It was from Khalid. Simple words. You kept your promise. Now I'm keeping mine. Starting medical school next month. We'll save lives in your honor. Lena held the card and let herself feel. Not the cold, not the ice, but warmth, connection. The knowledge that something good had come from all the darkness. The next morning, she reported to the hospital for her shift. The charge nurse looked up, surprised. Lena, with everything on the news, I'm still a nurse, still need to work. But you're famous. You could do anything. I am doing what I want, saving lives. She clocked in and went to work. The ER was busy, car accidents, heart attacks, the usual chaos. Lena moved through it with practiced efficiency, her hands healing instead of hurting. During her break, Derek showed up. He was in civilian clothes, looking uncomfortable. Hey, I wanted to apologize again for the bar, for being an asshole. You already did. I know, but I keep thinking about it, about how I treated you, what I assumed. He shifted his weight. I was everything wrong with the teams, the ego, the arrogance, and you. He trailed off. I what? You showed me what being a real operator looks like. Not the glory or the reputation, but the hard choices, the sacrifice, the willingness to do what's right, even when it costs you everything. Lena was quiet for a moment. You did good in Syria, you and the team. You proved you're more than ego. I want to do more. Frank's putting together something, a private outfit. Former operators running missions that the government can't or won't touch. Hostage rescue, counter-trafficking, humanitarian stuff. He met her eyes. He wants you to lead it. I'm done with that life. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you just led a team through an impossible mission and exposed a decades-old conspiracy. That doesn't sound done to me. That was different. That was personal. And there are thousands of people out there with personal situations. People who need help, who need someone who won't quit on them. Derek handed her a card. Think about it. No pressure, but the offer's there. He left. Lena looked at the card. Simple contact information, a phone number, an address. She slipped it into her pocket and went back to work. Over the following weeks, the investigation unfolded. Congressional hearings brought forward evidence. Witnesses testified. The Sandrift mission was declassified. The full story revealed. Lena's team was posthumously awarded medals for their service. There was a ceremony. Full honors. Lena attended in her dress uniform, the first time she'd worn it in 10 years. She stood at attention as names were read, as families accepted medals, as 5 operators finally received the recognition they'd earned. Afterward, the families approached her. Mothers, fathers, widows, children who'd grown up without their fathers. They thanked her for surviving, for fighting, for making sure the truth came out. Lena didn't feel like she deserved their gratitude, but she accepted it with grace because they needed to give it. One woman, the widow of her team's medic, hugged her and whispered, "He would have been proud of you, what you did. He always said you were the best leader he'd ever served under." Lena held her and cried, 10 years of held-back tears finally breaking free. That night, she went to the Crossroads bar. Marcus was behind the counter, and the place was packed. Word had spread. Everyone wanted to see Viper 1 in person, but Lena didn't want to be Viper 1 tonight. She just wanted to be Lena. She found a quiet corner and ordered bourbon. Frank joined her, then Derek, then Carlos. One by one, the team assembled. The men who'd followed her into Syria, who'd helped expose the conspiracy, who'd become something more than operators. Friends. They drank. They told stories. They laughed at shared memories and mourned shared losses. And slowly, Lena felt the ice in her chest thaw. Not completely. That kind of damage never fully healed. But enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to feel. Enough to imagine a future that didn't involve hiding. Frank raised his glass. To Viper 1, the operator who wouldn't quit, the leader who brought us home. To Viper, the table echoed. Lena raised her own glass. To second chances, and to the people who make them possible. They drank. Later, walking to her car, Lena pulled out the card Derek had given her. the offer to lead a team, to go back to operations, to use her skills for something that mattered. She thought about her team, about the promise she'd made to Khalid, about the letters from strangers who'd found hope in her story. She thought about the hospital, about the lives she saved every day, about the patients who needed her, and she realized she didn't have to choose. Viper 1 had been an operator, Lena Crow was a nurse, but maybe she could be both. Maybe she could save lives in the ER and run missions in her off hours. Maybe she could balance the healing and the fighting. Maybe she could finally integrate the two halves of herself instead of keeping them separate. She pulled out her phone and dialed Frank's number. Yeah? I'm in, but on my terms. I lead, I choose the missions, and we only take jobs that matter. Wouldn't have it any other way. When do we start? There's a situation in South America. American aid workers taken hostage. Government won't negotiate. Families are desperate. Lena felt the familiar cold settle in her chest, but this time it didn't feel like ice. It felt like purpose. Send me the details. I'll put together a plan. She hung up and looked at the San Diego skyline, the city she'd hidden in for 10 years, the city that had given her a second chance. Now it was time to give second chances to others. Lena Crow got in her car and drove home. She had a shift at the hospital in the morning. Lives to save, work to do. And after that, there was a team to lead, a mission to plan. People who needed help. She wasn't running anymore. Wasn't hiding. Wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was Viper 1. She was Lena Crow. She was both and neither and everything in between. And she was finally, after 10 long years, exactly where she needed to be. 3 months later, the team deployed to Colombia. They extracted 4 aid workers from a guerrilla camp, losing 0 operators and leaving the hostage takers alive but neutralized. The families cried when their loved ones came home. The news called it a miracle. Lena called it Tuesday. 6 months after that, they stopped a human trafficking ring in Eastern Europe, freed 37 victims, arrested 12 traffickers, put an organization out of business. 9 months after that, they rescued a journalist kidnapped in Yemen, then a doctor in the Congo, then a teacher in the Philippines. Every mission, Lena returned to the hospital, worked her shifts, saved lives in the ER, lived as Lena Crow. But when the phone rang with coordinates and a mission brief, she became Viper 1 again. The ghost who wouldn't die. The operator who never quit. The legend who'd become real. People asked her how she did it, how she balanced 2 lives, how she kept going after everything she'd survived. She always gave the same answer. I made a promise, and I keep my promises. Because in the end, that's what separated the heroes from the ghosts. Not the medals or the skills or the reputation, but the willingness to show up, to fight, to protect, to never abandon the people who needed you. Lena had learned that lesson in blood and fire, had paid for it with a decade of hiding and guilt. But now she lived it every day. In the hospital, in the field, in the quiet moments between missions when she looked at Khalid's drawing and remembered why she fought. Some people become legends through extraordinary moments. Others become legends by refusing to quit on ordinary ones. Lena Crow, Viper 1, was both. And she was just getting started. Plus, the world is full of people who need help. And sometimes, the only thing standing between them and despair is one person willing to keep their promise no matter the cost. Be that person. Keep your promises. Never quit on those who need you most.